evening, viewers. You're watching the news on Sansad Television and I'm Rashika. Before we take you through the top developments of the day, a look at the headlines this evening. Defence Minister meets service chiefs. 10% reservation approved for Agniveers in Coast Guard Defence Civilian Post and 16 DPSUs. CAPS and Assam Rifles. The Prime Minister unveils development projects worth over 21,000 crore rupees to Gujarat. Tells Bharat Gaurav Abhiyan rally in Vadodara, empowerment of women necessary for development. India and EU restart negotiations on free trade agreement after 8 years. Commerce Minister Piyush Goyal says significant increase in bilateral trade in last few months. Flood situation worsens in Assam. Prime Minister speaks to Chief Minister Biswa Sarma. Over 2,000 people displaced due to floods in Tripura. Attack on Gurudwara in Kabul, capital of Afghanistan. 2 people killed, 7 injured. Indian Foreign Ministry expresses concern. Now look at the day's top stories in our flash segment. After NCP's Sharad Pawar, Farooq Abdullah also withdraws his name for consideration as a joint opposition's candidate for the presidential election. External Affairs Minister Jai Shankar and his Vietnamese counterpart launched joint logo for celebration of 50 years of bilateral diplomatic relations. Education Minister Dharmendra Pradhan inaugurates National Yoga Olympiad 2022 and quiz competition in New Delhi. Competition to conclude on 20th. Polio immunization to start on Sunday in 11 states and union territories. Around 3 crore 9 lakh children aged less than 5 years will be given polio drops. National Commission for Women panel suggests extension of paternity leave so that both parents can equally raise their child. 2 people killed after unidentified gunman opened fire in Gurudwara in Kabul. Dr. S. Jaishankar says cowardly attacks should be condemned in strongest terms by all. Ministry of Culture and ASI organize Yoga Mahotsav at Purana QILA in New Delhi. Minister of State for Culture Arjun Ram Meghwal stresses yoga keeps body, mind, intellect and soul together. Plunge in cryptocurrencies continues unabated. Bitcoin breaks $19,000, Ethereum below $1,000 barrier. Dinesh Karthik becomes oldest Indian to score a half-century in T20 internationals at the age of 37 in the match at Rajkot against South Africa. 22-time Grand Slam winner Rafael Nadal to play at Wimbledon 2022 after nerve-numbing radiofrequency treatment eases long-standing pain in his left foot. Prime Minister Modi on Saturday unfurled the traditional flag Dhwaj on the famous Mahakali temple in Gujarat's Panchmahal district after a dargah that stood atop the temple was shifted with the consent of its caretakers. The Prime Minister said the flag is not just symbol of our spirituality, but shows our faith remains strong despite passage of centuries. The flag was not unfurled for 5 centuries and not even during 75 years after independence, he said. The Shikhara or spire of the temple was destroyed by Sultan Mahmud Begda nearly 500 years ago. It has been restored now as part of the redevelopment of the 11th century temple situated in the Pavagar or hill.
आस्था के साथ साथ तीर्थों और मंदिरों के विकास में आधुनिक तकनीक का इस्तेमाल किया जा रहा है। सभी तीर्थों पर यात्री सुविधाओं का विकास किया गया है। गुजरात के तीर्थों में अब दिव्यता भी है, शांति भी है, समाधान भी है, संतोष भी है और इससे बड़ा सुख क्या हो सकता है।
Prime Minister Modi addressed the Bharat Gaurav Abhiyan rally in Vadodara on Saturday. He asserted that the empowerment of women is essential for the overall development of India in the 21st century. Prime Minister also laid the foundation stone for development projects worth 21,000 crore rupees in Vadodara. These include railway projects worth 16,000 crore rupees.
हमने सिर्फ पोषण की योजना ही नहीं बनाई, बल्कि सुविधाएं लाभार्थी बहनों बच्चों तक ठीक से पहुंच रही है, इसकी भी चिंता की है। गुजरात सहित देश भर में लगभग 11.5 करोड़ लाभार्थी बहनों बच्चों के स्वास्थ्य की निगरानी रियल टाइम मॉनिटरिंग हो रहा है। ये जो पोषण सुधा योजना का विस्तार हुआ है, उसकी निगरानी के लिए मोबाइल ऐप बनाया गया है।
The Ministry of Home Affairs has announced a 10% quota in the Central Armed Police Forces and Assam Rifles across the country for Agniveers. It has also decided to give 3 years age relaxation beyond the prescribed upper age limit to Agniveers for recruitment in CAPF and Assam Rifles. It said the age relaxation for the first batch of Agniveer will be for 5 years beyond the prescribed upper age limit. Army Chief General Manoj Pandey said the transformational reforms in the armed forces continue despite the need for a high level of operational preparedness in the face of sensitive borders and internal threats. Addressing a joint graduation parade at the Air Force Academy, General Manoj Pandey said emerging technologies like artificial intelligence, quantum computing, robotics and hypersonics are no longer confined to principles but are manifesting directly on the battlefields.
Hypersonic swarms, to name a few, are no longer confined to theory but are physically manifesting in battle spaces. Therefore, harnessing and leveraging technology is no longer an option but an essential mission mandate. There are also transformational reforms underway in the armed forces, in the human resource management and other domains such as capability development, with focus on Atmanirbharta.
Chief of Air Staff, Air Chief Marshal Vivek Ram Chaudhary, spoke in defense of the Agniveer plan. He said the Air Force is in dire need of youth with new enthusiasm and new ideas.
Get hold of the correct information, understand the scheme in its entirety. They will themselves see the advantages and the benefits of the scheme, and I'm sure this will quell all the doubts and whatever dissatisfactions they have in their mind.
Naval Chief Admiral R. Hari Kumar termed the Agniveer plan the biggest human resource management change in Indian armed forces.
अगले 10-15 साल में हर गांव से एक अग्निवीर होगा तो उससे वो गांव का भी प्रगति हो जाएगी और हमारी जो मिलिट्री है उसका भी कनेक्ट अच्छा हो जाएगा। मतलब आर्म फोर्सेस और सिटीजन्स जो है उनका जो लिंकेज और शक्त हो जाएगा।
13,216 new COVID cases have been reported in the last 24 hours. Number of patients under the treatment has increased to 68,108. This is the first time in 113 days that more than 13,000 cases of infection have been reported. The national rate of recovery is 98.63%. Over 196 crore doses of anti-COVID-19 vaccines have been administered across the country. External Affairs Minister S. Jaishankar chaired the meeting of the Parliamentary Consultative Committee on the situation in Sri Lanka on Saturday. He said everyone unitedly supported the need to stand with the neighbouring country in this difficult time. Ministers of State for External Affairs V. Muralidharan, Meenakshi Lekhi and Rajkumar Ranjan Singh also attended the meeting. Also present were opposition leaders including Priyanka Chaturvedi of Shiv Sena and Tiruchi Siva of DMK. Sri Lanka is facing an economic crisis that has caused acute shortage of essential commodities like food, medicine, cooking gas and fuel. India and the European Union resumed negotiations for a comprehensive free trade agreement on Friday in Brussels after 8 years. Commerce and Industry Minister Piyush Goyal said implementation of these pacts will unleash untapped potential for enhancing economic ties between the two regions. The EU and India are already major trading partners with an annual trade of 120 billion euros. The European Union team will visit New Delhi for the next round of FTA talks from 27 June to 1st of July.
Committed to meeting ambitious timelines and putting together a package which would mean good for the people of the European Union and India, which will provide opportunities for businesses in the European Union and India, and will further strengthen the wonderful relations that we have had over 60 years.
Now, more news from across the nation. Information Technology Minister Ashwini Vaishnav says there's clear consensus in the country to make social media platforms more accountable. He said the government will bring necessary legal changes and regulations for this. The 7th meeting of Joint Consultative Commission between India and Bangladesh will be held in Delhi on 19 June. The JCC will be co-chaired by External Affairs Minister Dr. S. Jaishankar and Bangladesh Foreign Minister Dr. A.K. Abdul Momin. A Delhi court has rejected the bail plea of Delhi Minister Satyendra Jain, who has been arrested by the ED in a money laundering case. A police officer was killed by terrorists in Kashmir's Pulwama district. The attack on Farooq Ahmad Mir took place at Sambura in Pampore area. He was posted in IRP 23rd Battalion. With less than a fortnight left for the Amarnath Yatra to begin, officials review the security and other arrangements for the pilgrims on the 270-kilometer-long Jammu-Srinagar National Highway. Helicopter service has been stopped for devotees after heavy rains in Kedarnath Dham in Uttarakhand. Along with this, devotees have been instructed to remain alert. The Bharat Gaurav train will run from 21st June to promote religious travel. All its preparations have been completed. The train will take devotees to the places associated with Lord Ram over 18 days. Prime Minister Modi wrote a blog dedicated to his mother on her 100th birthday. In the blog, he talks about her sacrifices and aspects of life that shaped her self-belief, mind and personality. Global rating agency Moody's has improved the basic credit assessment of ICICI and Axis Bank. It improved the baseline credit assessment of these banks from Baa3 to Baa1. This will, however, not change the deposit rating. The flood situation continues to worsen in northeastern states. Prime Minister Modi took stock of the current situation in a phone call to Assam Chief Minister Himanta Biswa Sarma. He assured all the possible help from the centre. The heavy rains have submerged many areas in Assam. More than 19 lakh people of 28 districts are displaced by the floods. 55 lives have been lost so far. In Sadar subdivision in West Tripura, more than 2,000 people were displaced. The district received 155 mm of rain in the last 24 hours, inundating many low-lying areas along the Havra River. The state government has closed schools and colleges. Chief Minister Manik Saha himself is monitoring the situation. On the other side, rains in Delhi have brought down the temperature after many days of a severe heat wave. Many areas of Delhi morning received a heavy downpour, aggravating waterlogging in many places. Time for a short break here. On the other side, electronic skin that enables future robots to be touch sensitive and feel pain.
Tanks have never been used in the combined arms manner that they are meant to be used. Tanks are an offensive weapon. Tanks have a role to play in shaping and bringing the outcome of any conflict.
Whether it be Western equipment or Russian equipment, a direct hit on a tank will take a toll on the tank. Javelin is definitely a wonderful anti-tank weapon, and it has proved its worth.
Despite overpowering superiority in tanks and mechanized forces, the Russians have not been able to exhibit the kind of advantages that come with the use of such forces. Watch our special presentation in The Defenders, only on Sansad TV.
Welcome back to the news. Now time for all the main developments from the Russia-Ukraine war front. In the latest news from Ukraine, British Prime Minister Boris Johnson met President Zelensky in a surprise visit to capital Kiev. Johnson launched a major training operation for Ukrainian forces with the potential to train up to 10,000 soldiers every 120 days. He said UK's landmark program could fundamentally change the equation of the war, ensuring the armed forces of Ukraine have the resilience to fight the Russian forces of President Vladimir Putin. Russia renewed its effort to advance south of Ukraine's eastern city of Izium in the last 48 hours, the British Defense Ministry has said. Its goal is to penetrate deeper into the Donetsk region and envelop the pocket around the embattled city of Severodonetsk from the north, it said in an intelligence update on Twitter. The United Nations says more than 10,000 civilians, including hundreds of children, have now been killed or injured in the war in Ukraine. The UN Office of the High Commissioner for Human Rights said 4,509 people had been killed and 5,585 injured till June 16th. The dead include 294 children. President Vladimir Putin told a Russian investment conference that the country's economy will overcome reckless and insane sanctions. Putin told the St. Petersburg International Economic Forum that the US declared victory in the Cold War and the later came to think of themselves as God's own messenger on planet Earth. Russia invited Chinese President Xi Jinping to address the St. Petersburg International Economic Forum on Friday. Speaking by a video link, Xi told the forum that it was necessary to build an open world economy and reject attempts at decoupling, supply disruption, unilateral sanctions, and maximum pressure. The European Union says Russia is putting the world at risk of famine through its blockage of Ukraine's shipments of grains and restrictions on its own exports. EU Foreign Policy Chief Josep Borrell says Russia's conscious political choice is to weaponize grain exports and use them as a tool for blackmail against anyone that opposes its aggression in Ukraine. A Russian-owned super yacht seized by the United States arrived in Honolulu Harbor flying the American flag. The US last week won a legal battle in Fiji to take the $325 million vessel and immediately sailed it to Hawaii. The FBI has linked the Amidea to the Russian oligarch Suleiman Kerimov. The US said Kerimov secretly bought the Cayman Island flagged vessel last year through various shelf companies. Time now for some other global updates. Global financial watchdog Financial Action Task Force has said Pakistan will continue to stay on its grey list for terror funding and money laundering. It, however, added that a final decision to remove it from the list will be taken after an on-site verification visit by the Paris-based body. This decision was announced after the conclusion of the 4-day FATF plenary in Berlin, where delegates from governments around the world and partner organizations, including the UN and IMF, discussed key money laundering and terror funding financial issues. Pakistan has been on the grey list of the Paris-based global money laundering and terrorist financing watchdog since June 2018. US regulators on Friday authorized the first COVID-19 shots for infants and preschoolers, paving the way for vaccinations to begin next week. The Food and Drug Administration's action follows its advisory panel's unanimous recommendation for the shots from Moderna and Pfizer.
American kids under 5, roughly 18 million youngsters, are eligible for vaccination, about 1.5 years after vaccines first became available for adults. For weeks, the Biden administration has been preparing to roll out the vaccines for little kids, with states, tribes, community health centers, and pharmacies pre-ordering millions of doses. The emergency use authorization allows manufacturers to begin shipping vaccine across the country. Vaccinations could begin early next week. While young children generally don't get as sick from COVID-19 as older kids and adults, their hospitalizations surged during Omicron wave. Studies from Moderna and Pfizer showed side effects including fever and fatigue were mostly minor. In testing, the littlest children developed high levels of virus-fighting antibodies, comparable to what it is seen in young adults. The FDA said Moderna's vaccine was about 40 to 50% effective at preventing infections, but there were too few cases during Pfizer's study to reliably determine effectiveness. Pfizer's vaccine for kids younger than 5 is 1/10 of the adult dose. 3 shots are needed. The first 2 are given 3 weeks apart and the last at least 2 months later. Moderna's is 2 shots, each a quarter of its adult dose, given about 4 weeks apart for kids under 6. Bureau Report, Sansad TV.
And in more news across the world, 2 people died and several others were trapped in a Gurudwara in Afghanistan's capital Kabul after 2 blasts rocked the city on Friday. The blast took place near the gates of the Gurudwara. Multiple gunshots were heard. India has expressed deep concern over the attack. The legal counsel of WikiLeaks founder Julian Assange said they will appeal his extradition to the UK on espionage charges. He said the case could ultimately be taken to the European Court of Human Rights in Strasbourg. Assange is currently in the high-security Belmarsh prison in London. He is wanted in the US on 18 criminal charges. US Pacific Marine Commander met the Japanese Defense Ministry in Tokyo on Friday. The 2 allies are strengthening military cooperation amid growing maritime activity by China and Russia in the regional seas. Japan is expanding its defense budget and revising its key national security strategy in the face of threats from China, North Korea, and now Russia. Sri Lanka's economy activity is coming to a standstill as the island nation runs out of fuel for transport and there's little signs of fresh supplies coming in. The government declared a holiday for public offices and schools to curtail vehicular movement on Friday. The South Asian nation has reached out to several companies and countries, including Russia, for fuel supplies. Spain is battling wildfires as the country endures a 6th day of a heat wave that saw temperatures rising to 43 degrees Celsius in many cities. The intense temperatures and lack of rain has helped fuel wildfires across the country, stretching firefighters to the limit. Spain's Ecological Transition Ministry says 75% of Spanish land is vulnerable to desertification and wildfires. Lack of rain and high temperatures are further increasing this. UK researchers are working on a new type of electronic skin that can feel pain and can remember what different types of touch feel like. Instead of having one central processing center, the skin is embedded with synaptic transistors and each one mimics our brain's ability to learn. Take a detailed look.
Robots these days don't just walk, they see and talk. Italian researchers have enabled humanoid robot ABEL with a range of facial expressions. Now scientists at the University of Glasgow's James Watt School of Engineering have developed touch-sensitive artificial skin that can feel pain. They've tested the skin on a robotic arm. At first, the hand does not respond to being pricked with a sharp object. Then later, it learns to respond appropriately. The researchers also test the hand with different levels of force. To build an electronic skin which is similar to a human's, the researchers printed a grid of 168 synaptic transistors made from zinc oxide nanowires directly onto the surface of a flexible plastic surface. The synaptic transistors are connected with the skin sensor on the palm of a robot hand. When the sensor is touched, it registers a change in its electrical resistance. A slight change corresponds to a light touch, and harder touch creates a larger change in resistance. The aim is to mimic the way sensory neurons work in the human body. The skin developed by Glasgow has mini printed transistors all over the skin, which are constantly learning and remembering according to the researchers.
So in a sense, if you press the robotic hand with the same amount of force again and again over a period of time, Robot now knows that, it's kind of the similar force that is being applied. And based on that, robot could react. So let's say if robot understands with time that, this force is a comfortable force, it's a friendly shake hand, robot will react like natural, two friends meet. So that reflex would be according to that. But if it becomes it comes as a surprise to robot that it has not learned, then it will react differently.
Researchers say if you add this skin to other advances to make the machines move, talk and see, the result will be far more effective and sophisticated robots. And sometime in the future, the skin could contribute to robots which interact with our world in completely innovative ways. Bureau Report, Sansad TV.
Time now for all the sporting action. Starting with badminton, India's HS Pranoy lost in the semi-finals of the Indonesia Open Super 1000 tournament in Jakarta today. Pranoy lost to China's Xia Peng 16-21, 15-21. With Pranoy's loss, Indian challenge ended in the tournament. In tennis, Daniil Medvedev has reached the final of the Halle Open grass court tournament being played in Germany. In the semi-finals, Medvedev defeated Germany's Oscar Otte in straight sets 7-6, 6-3. In golf, two-time major winner Collin Morikawa seized a share of the lead while Jon Rahm and Rory McIlroy were only one stroke adrift to the second round of US Open golf tournament. 7th-ranked Morikawa fired a 4 under par 66, and American Joel Damon, who shot 68, joined him on 5 under 135 after 36 holes at the country club. In cricket, the fifth final and decisive T20 match of the India-South Africa series will be played tomorrow at the M. Chinnaswamy Stadium, Bengaluru. India has made a remarkable comeback after going down 0-2 in the series. India lost the first two matches in Delhi and Cuttack and then rode back with 2 consecutive wins in Vizag and Rajkot to level the series at 2-2. The Ranji Trophy final for the year 2021-22 will be played between Mumbai and Madhya Pradesh. In the match played at Alur, Bengal needed 350 runs to win against MP but were bowled out for 175 with left-arm spinner Kumar taking 5 for 67 to take MP to Ranji Trophy final after 23 years. The other semi-final between Mumbai and Uttar Pradesh ended as a tame draw. Mumbai went through to the finals on the basis of first innings lead. Before we take a wrap, let's take a look at the headlines once again. Defence Minister meets service chiefs. 10% reservation approved for Agniveers in Coast Guard, Defence Civilian Post and 16 DPSUs, CAPFs and Assam Rifles. The Prime Minister unveils development projects worth Rs 21,000 crore to Gujarat, tells Gujarat Gaurav Abhiyan rally in Vadodara, empowerment of women necessary for development. India and EU restart negotiations on free trade agreement after 8 years. Commerce Minister Piyush Goyal says significant increase in bilateral trade in the last few months. Flood situation worsens in Assam. Prime Minister speaks to Chief Minister Biswa Sarma. Over 2,000 people displaced due to floods in Tripura. Attack on Gurudwara in Kabul, capital of Afghanistan. 2 people killed, 7 injured. Indian Foreign Ministry expresses concern. That's all we have in this bulletin. To keep yourself updated, stay tuned to Sansad Television. Good night.